Your children are going to lose all of the wealth that you've worked your entire life creating for them because of their perception of this one thing and your perception of this one thing. Generational wealth. So generational wealth is a buzzword that people hear, and it's quite a taboo topic because for some reason in our cultures, we're just taught to not ask about it, to not talk about it. But it's one of the most important discussions that we will have and that we should have. We should be talking about this. There is an extremely worrying stat. The median wealth for a household in Britain is £286,600. It's pretty decent. This is between the years of, I believe, 2016, 2018, so it might be different now. The lowest median total wealth is amongst black Africans, right? £34,300, if that. You see, most people who are of black African descent, a lot of us have more debts than we have in assets. That's a big problem. That means that your wealth is actually negative. So this is why this number is so low, right? So now for me, you know, just for background, I'm Caribbean. So for me, this hits home pretty heavy because this is no different to me. I shouldn't be in this position and you shouldn't be in this position either. So you need to make sure that you are paying attention to this because this is going to be a big thing for you. This is a big discussion that needs to be had. And I really wish that I had this when I was younger because when I was younger, at the age of 15 years old, unfortunately, my dad passed away from heart attack and pneumonia. Now, before he passed away, he was an accountant. So he built an accountancy business and managed to get to the point where he's telling me, son, I just made £2,000 this morning. You know, he's doing amazing. That was a big glimpse into a whole different world that I didn't even know existed, right? The whole world of business. Unfortunately, when he passed away, we had to sell his business and so forth. And I found myself at the age of 18 with a little bit of a head start in life, right? So obviously when he passed away, we had a little bit of inheritance, shared that between my siblings. And that put me in an odd position where I'm 18 years old. I haven't really learned exactly what to do with this money. And I'm gassed up. I'm thinking, okay, I'm invincible. I can do whatever I want with this. So what happened was I lost it all. Within that first year of having that money in my pocket, I spent every single penny and had nothing left to show for it. And this is a big problem, right? You could imagine a small head start in life that could have been taken to unbelievable heights. But because I didn't know what to do with it, because that I didn't know these 4 different things that will affect my ability to actually carry on this generational wealth forward, I unfortunately lost it all. This is a very harsh lesson that I had, and I want you guys to learn from this lesson. So if you're somebody who you're about to receive an inheritance, or you're about to receive a large lump sum of cash, maybe from a tax rebate or insurance payout, whatever it is, or you're somebody who has saved up a generous amount of money and you know you already have a job and you've got capital saved up, but you just don't know what to do with it. Or you're somebody who, like me, you want to create generational wealth for your family, okay? And you're ready to pass it on, or you're trying to prepare yourself to be able to pass it on at a future date. This video is created for you, so you can learn from my mistakes. So not only are your heirs protected, but you are protected if you're about to receive the money. If your heirs are going to receive the money, so they're protected, and you're putting the systems in place to ensure that they're able to actually take the capital and actually put that capital to use, which I did not do, right? At least effectively. But I'm really thankful for this experience because this experience, it showed me so much about, not only about myself, but about money, because now I'm put in this position where I was given something and my mind is stretched to actually, you know, have this thing. And now I'm used to having this thing and now it's just been taken away from me. I now want to relive that level of standard of living I was able to live during that first year when I had that capital in my pockets. So what I had to do is I had to seek knowledge. I had to seek different ways how I can actually gain back that wealth so I can then do what I want to do again. So I can live that same lifestyle, if not even better. And through this journey, I'm learning so many different things. I'm meeting different people. I'm reading different books. I'm acquiring different knowledge. I'm gaining experience. And these experiences and all of these different bits of knowledge that I was able to acquire helped me to develop systems that allowed me to not only reach back to that head start point, but surpass it by a mile, if not 10 miles. But this really did highlight a serious problem, and it's the fact that there's a bunch of people out there who may be receiving generational wealth, or, you know, we're told to, oh, we should be aiming to create generational wealth, but we don't actually think about, oh, will it actually pass on correctly though? Not only that, but When I pass on, will it be passed on at the full amount? How can I make it so I can do that? How can I make it so when it does get passed on to my heirs, they know what to do with it so it's actually employed with reason, and it not only reaches them, but reaches their grandkids and so forth. We don't really think that far. We only think about, oh, we're just going to live our life and that's it, pass on the money and then they can do whatever they want with it. I hear that, but it's not really an effective approach. Now, these are some crazy stats I'm about to tell you, and there's not many people that know about this. Let's say you have 10 different families. Now, for every 10 families who have wealth and are passing it on, only 3 of them out of the 10 will successfully pass it on, right? And what I mean by that is the remaining 7 families, their heirs will spend the money. That's it, done, just like how I did it, right? Now, for these final 3, they may have another family, and now there's 3 of them, right? We're not gonna play hangman here. We're just gonna draw them nice and neat, right? Or untidily. Excuse my art, I didn't major in art. I majored in accounting and finance. Okay, so leave me alone. So you see there's 3 different families that still have wealth after the first generation. Sorry, this is the second generation, excuse me. So this is the first generation of wealth, up here. Now this is the second generation. Now what's crazy about this? Basically, we found out that 1 out of 3, so a third of all families will lose wealth with each generation. So we've now got 3 families left. 1/3 of this means that only one of these families will still have wealth after the second generation has their run. I don't know about you, but this is extremely alarming because we start off with 10 families, but by the 3rd generation, there's only 1 left that still has wealth. So now we need to think about different things now. Now we need to think about, okay, so why is this? So there's 4 ways that generational wealth is lost. So the first reason is breakdown of communication and trust within the family unit. So this is pretty much accounts for most of it, as you can see, 60%, it's quite a lot. Now you can imagine there's jealousy, right? There's envy within the family. When somebody passes away, obviously emotions are high. There's some people who feel entitled towards receiving all of the wealth, if not majority of it. There's some people who feel like another person, another member of the family is undeserving of it. You have another aspect of people even weaponizing the passing of wealth in spite of other family members. Maybe they don't like a certain family member, so they purposely single out one single member of the family or collection of the family. And that now puts the one who's getting the wealth in a really uncomfortable position because now everybody else is jealous of that person. So obviously that's not really the best way of going about it if you're passing down the wealth, because you need to think about actually upkeeping that communication and trust within the family. Now, there's one other thing as well. It's actually not planning ahead. A lot of us think that, oh yeah, we're just gonna die one day, that's it, and the wealth just passed down to the next generation. Well, not necessarily, because you have to think about the fact that if you don't plan ahead and you don't plan who will get which asset, the government will. And you can already imagine it's probably not really gonna go the best way if that happens, right? So what you should do is better to have a will in place to ensure that the people that you want to have your assets will get your assets and they'll get the assets that you choose for them to have. Another element is, overall planning, right? People plan their lives, but you don't plan for death. So you need to think about life insurance, right? Because at the end of the day, when you get a inheritance, you're taxed 40% of it. And then on top of that, you may also have debts that pass down. How would that then be handled? Your family are gonna have to pay for funeral costs. How are they gonna be able to pay for that? They're quite costly. So it's all of these different things you're planning ahead, and that's obviously going to diminish your wealth if they're paying all of their money onto those things, and by the time they receive your wealth, there's pennies left, right? So you wanna make sure that they're actually getting the most amount as possible. Now the next is unprepared heirs, right? So unprepared heirs, this accounts for 25%. This is quite a lot, all right? A quarter of the reasoning behind generational wealth being lost is due to people simply being unprepared. Now you can imagine, there's different ways how somebody can be unprepared. I was unprepared because I didn't have knowledge of what I can do with this capital. I just received a bunch of money. I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? And then, there's businesses out there And people out there who might not have your best interests at heart, right? They're gonna tell you, oh yeah, just buy this, buy this, buy this, because they know that they're gonna get some easy money from it. Businesses, of course, they're gonna market things to make you want something even if you don't really want it. You might impulse purchase something, and then next you know, you're spending all your money, and it's not even in large sums, right? For me, it wasn't a large sum up front where I've lost everything. For me, it was incremental, small costs that built up over time. You know, getting Ubers when I didn't need to get an Uber. Right? Going out and buying everybody cocktails, stuff like that, right? It is unnecessary, right? Especially when you don't have certain things that I'm going to show you later on inside this video, because these are ways how you can prepare yourself as an heir and prepare your children to be heirs, and also prepare yourself in general. Now, the third one is lack of mission. So lack of mission, now this is quite a big one, surprisingly. So it accounts for 17%. And the reason why this is big is because that when you think about creating generational wealth, if you pass on the wealth to somebody who doesn't actually know what to do with that money, don't have a purpose in life, they're just going to spend the money on foolishness because there's no reason behind this money. Let's take, for example, if you build your wealth and a lot of your wealth is being put into a charity, for example, and you know that mission, your family has a certain mission statement. Oh, we are here to, create more wealth amongst the Caribbean diaspora. That's one mission that you could have. People are now going to make sure that they're maintaining their wealth so they can maybe reinvest into building a school that maybe you built or you planned on building. They may take on that mission and pay it forward. Right? Maybe you might go back to Jamaica or Trinidad and Tobago, build a school, for example, build up education centers, etc., or health centers, whatever it is. That's going to give you purpose, because now there's a reason why I have this capital. Now there's a reason why I should acquire this capital, because now it's not just, oh, I'm just here to have this money just so I can spend it on Gucci, Louis, Ace of Spades. It's just stuff that you just don't need, right? You want to think about places where you can actually plant your money so it grows a real tree over time in the longer run. And if you can pass that idea on to your children, onto the heirs, they will benefit from that tremendously, because now they have a reason behind the capital. Now, the final one, which might surprise you, is 3%, right? Professional failure. So what this might look like a financial advisor of some sort, and maybe they are the ones who are sorting out your inheritance and so forth. Now, if for some reason they mess up, that's obviously going to account for the loss of the wealth. This is only 3%. So it's actually not the person who is handling it, the financial advisors and the products that they're using and stuff like that. Now, a lot of the products, you probably don't need them, but at the end of the day, we can see it's only 3%. So there's 3 things that we can handle upon ourselves that will increase the likelihood of generational wealth successfully transferring to the next generation. So this is very important to all consider. Now, the big problem. There's a huge problem, guys. There's a very huge problem, right? It's that we think that wealth is limited to financial provision. Now, what I mean by that is we have somehow fooled ourselves, and it's probably because that we're not actually taught about financial literacy. We're not actually taught about what wealth is. We're not taught about how wealth is created, how wealth is maintained. We're not taught about that. So of course we think like this. I understand completely, but it's time we shift our level of thought away from this. So when you think about wealth, a lot of us think it's just about having money. It's not that. It's a bunch of different things. Now, this goes into unprepared heirs, right? So when we're talking about unprepared heirs, the mindset of an unprepared heir is quite simply put. They've just received a bunch of money, and they're young, they're dumb, and now they've got a lot of Play-Doh to play with, pretty much, right? So what they do is they just spend frivolously and impulse purchases and large purchases, maybe a bunch of small purchases like me. It's just a whole bunch of different things, and it adds up over time, and it ends up leading to them have nothing left. And you can actually see a similar thing happening with lottery winners, right? When people win the lottery, they do a similar thing. It's a similar mindset. So when people win the lottery, what do? They go out there, spend loads of money, and then they end up losing it all, right? So when it comes to wealth, it's not only the financial provision. Of course, wealth is, we ideally want the financial wealth as well. But it comes with a different thing, right? Something else needs to happen in order for us to have this financial provision, right? If you're building wealth right now, you're not building this wealth from the ground up just because you have money. No. The reason why you're able to build the wealth to begin with is because you have a certain type of mindset. You have a certain set of skills. You have a certain set of knowledge, aka intellectual capital. So, if you want to prepare your heirs and prepare yourself, if you are an heir or you're somebody who's trying to pass capital down to an heir, right? You need to build up the human and intellectual capital. So quite simply put, this is the knowledge, this is the attributes, and these are the skills that you build, right? So skills could look like, for example, let's take, for example, me. I learned the skill of trading from the age of 17, and then I finally actually saw profitability once it was a little bit too late, but when I was 19, right? So I actually couldn't actually take advantage of the fact that I had this lump sum of cash and I could reinvest that. I didn't have that skill set just yet. I was still building that up. So when it comes to skills, you need to have that type of skill set, something that's of high value of some sort that can allow you to develop and to not only to develop, but to gain more, right? To gain more cash, develop cash. We're going to go into that later on. Attributes, this is your character, okay? So what kind of attributes does a successful person have? Self-discipline, okay? Empathy, communication. These are all things that somebody who is wealthy will have. So you need to start building upon that. You need to actually create those attributes within yourself. Self-motivated, that could be one of them as well. Humor, even being funny can get you deals, can close capital, bring you inflow, can maybe help you develop relationships with people and so forth, right? Knowledge, of course, it goes without saying. To actually have the knowledge to begin with is what helps you to have that theoretical groundwork to help you to develop a skill set or to develop an attribute or to grow your capital and maintain your capital. Without the knowledge there to begin with, you're going to be put inside of a very tough position, right? You're not really going to know what you're doing. And this is where systems can come into play, right? A lot of the time, heirs do not have systems in place. The reason why you was able to build the wealth to pass to the heir to begin with, even if you didn't have a business, even if the only wealth you have is a pension, you had a system in place. And that system, quite simply put, was every single month when you get a paycheck, a portion is set aside and is invested into the S&P or is simply put inside of a high interest rate ISA account. That's still technically a system that you have. It might not yield you the highest amount of reward, but it's still a system and it's still doing its job. It still allowed for the succession of the wealth. So this is a system in play, right? So sometimes systems might require good teams, right? Sometimes systems might require capital goods. When I say capital goods, I mean like plant, property and equipment, right? PPE. So it could be machinery, it could be real estate, it could be whatever it is. You need a system of some sort, right? And that system will derive of teams, capital goods, and methodology, right? Because once you have the team and the capital goods, you need to have the methodology to make it happen, right? Let's take, for example, even if something that you're doing is a bit more on the investing side, and you don't actually have a team behind you, and you don't have the capital goods. In fact, you might still have a team. That could be a financial advisor, for example. It could be an accountant. It could be your wife, your husband, right? That's a player in your team at the end of the day. And that's a very valuable player who's going to be in your ear a lot of the time. That's going to impact things a little bit. Capital goods, for example. This might not even necessarily be, PPE. This might simply be money, right? At the end of the day, money is a resource that you're employing as an investor. So that's the main fuel. So if you're investing, you need to actually have the cash available. And that is going to be a part of your system, because if your system of building wealth is you investing into something and you seeking a return out of that, and you need the capital to begin with to do that. And then on top of that, the methodology. You can't just invest into anything blindly. That's gambling. You need to have a reason why you're investing. Are you first and foremost, what are you investing into? Are you doing venture capital? Are you somebody who's an angel investor? Are you somebody who is invested into stocks, bonds? Are you investing into or putting money inside of the markets and trading it like how I do? There's different ways of going about doing it. Are you investing into property? Why are you investing into that particular property? Right? How do you make sure you're getting the maximum return out of that property as possible? Are you going to just buy it, renovate it, and then refinance it, and then rent it? Or are you going to invest into it and then you're going to turn it and convert it into something else and just resell it straight away? Like, tell me, what are you going to do with it? That's your methodology behind it. Now, lack of mission, of course, a lot of heirs, in fact, most people, in fact, in this life lack a mission. So once you have a mission that your family is standing on, you will see how wealth just transitions smoother. Because think about all of the most powerful and rich families on this planet. Easy one to think of on the top of my head, the Rockefellers. They clearly have a mission. And you can tell by the way how they invest. You can tell what the business ventures they have. You can tell how they keep everything in circle. They have a mission. And their mission is based on virtues and principles that their family upholds. So you need to create a mission statement for your family. Pass that on. Teach those morals and those virtues and principles to your family members, right? To your heirs. Or just think about it for yourself. That's going to give you a sense of pride and glory and give you something to work towards in general. So besides that, you now need to think about, okay, so I want to build up that intellectual capital. How can you do that? So there's a few ways. Now, one way is in terms of passing it down from generation to generation, you'll observe that a lot of wealthy families, they write and share books, right? They do research, they share the research, right? They're publishing research, they're writing and sharing books, etc. Or they're creating something of some sort that can be passed down to the next generation, right? Let's take, for example, writing and sharing books, right? If you look at, for example, let's say Napoleon Hill, right? Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, The Laws of Success, all these different books. Those books are stamped into history. People can learn from those books. And not only are other people outside of your family learning from those books, but I can guarantee your children will buy that book and they will read that book. So if you have a valuable skill set and a valuable mindset or whatever it is, put that inside of a book. It might help with that, right? It might help with the actual acquisition of that skill set, or even just the mindset alone, okay? The next thing is hands-on teaching / mentoring to pass on the high-value skills. So obviously there's a string of high-value skills that can be attained. Whatever that is up to you. I don't live your life. I don't know what you're passionate about. I don't know what is valuable to you or in your area or country, but you need to think about how can I pass on this valuable skill set, okay? Whatever it is. And this is one thing I really do wish that my dad did more with me. He didn't actually teach me how to do accounting. So I had to go to university to study accounting and finance to find that skill set. But I really wish that he was able to just give me the gems of how he learned and coach me through that hands-on, right? But the only thing is I do understand that sometimes it can be difficult for that to happen. Because sometimes the respect levels between the father and the son, or father and daughter, or mother and daughter and mother and son might be a little bit different. Maybe you might not know how to teach effectively, maybe you might not know how to mentor effectively. But that's where it's upon you to learn how to communicate, which is one of the other skills that you could have, right? So, and bear in mind as well, with these skills, with these methods of increasing intellectual capital I'm giving to you, if you're somebody who is not looking to give inheritance to the next, if you're somebody who's not preparing to pass an inheritance onto the next generation, these are all things that you can do to gain the intellectual capital for yourself. Think about that, right? And what I mean by that is maybe for you, it might not be writing and sharing books and research. For you, it might be then reading books and research. For you, it might not be hands-on teaching or mentoring to pass on the higher value skills. It might be seeking out somebody who does teach and mentors to pass on high value skill sets. Somebody like me, for example, right? So there's so many different people out there who do teach, who do help and pass on different skill sets onto other people, right? So you need to think about people who can do that for you. Whatever skill set is that you're looking to master, you should find somebody who represents that and can teach at a high level and can get results for themselves ideally, and then learn from them, study them, shadow them, ask them questions. If you can, pay them. Right, that will obviously make it a lot more better for you, but in some cases you might not be able to pay. Maybe you could do some sort of value exchange. Maybe they might need help with a project and you can offer them a hand to get that mentoring, to get that teaching, and then in exchange you do whatever you bartered to do, whatever it is, right? So that's a different thing that you can do. And the next thing is tasking a generation to learn from, tasking the next generation. That way they learn from direct experience. Let's take, for example, if you have a child and you're trying to teach them about money management. You might, for maybe a 3-month period or for a year period, you tell them, look, every single month, I'm going to give you some sort of chores. And based upon these chores, I'm going to limit you to this amount of money per job that you do. Now, this is the only money I'm going to give you. So you need to learn how to make this money grow, and you need to know how to make this money stretch. So based upon this, you might teach them a plan of how they can do that. You might give them a budget sheet. You might teach them how to budget. Do you get what I'm saying? So you're giving them the opportunity to do that, and then you give them the opportunity to actually learn through them doing this, because now they have the opportunity to actually save for once. They're making their own money. They're putting it inside a little piggy bank, and they're gonna see, each month I'm making £10, and then maybe I might spend it on some sweets or whatever. But then now that's all of my capital gonna have to wait for the next month. That's teaching them a very valuable lesson about money, about building it up over time. If they want to build it, they have to save it. And if they want to save it, they have to learn how to cut out certain costs that they don't need for the beginner stages, right? They can't live above their means. They can't spend more than what they're making, right? And that might also create them to think, okay, so how can I create more? Well, how can I earn more than what I'm currently making? Do you get what I'm saying? So that might exercise their thoughts a little bit differently, right? Because it's going to give them the opportunity to fail forward. You need to give your heirs opportunity to fail, right? Because it's through those failures that you learn those lessons. But make sure that you're there to actually support them through those failures. Don't judge them for failing, because they're supposed to fail. They're supposed to learn from those losses, okay? And you can also raise cultural capital by meeting people and places outside of a typical environment. Now, I know a lot of people who, just for context, I was born and raised inside of South London. I know a lot of people from London who have never stepped foot outside of London before. And that shocks me every time I hear that. So you want to make sure that your child is being exposed to different ideas, different, topics, different pieces of art, different locations and historical structures. Expand their mind. It's going to inspire them. For example, Philip Emeagwali, I spoke about him in the School of Higher podcast, one of my old podcasts, and he's a billionaire inside of Africa, and I don't remember which country in particular, but Philip Emeagwali, he was known as the Bill Gates of Africa, like that. He's that level. And what he did was he built the world's fastest quantum computer. And the way how he did that was by looking at bees. He saw the way how bees were operating inside of the hives and the hexagonal structure of the hives. And he realized that that was the most efficient way of passing energy through something. And then I don't know how to build quantum computers. I'm not even going to bother trying to explain it. But he basically was inspired by that. And he then went on to make the world's fastest computer at that point of time. So that all came from cultural capital. That came from exposure to different environments. That came from just sitting back and observing different things. Now imagine what you can observe and what your child can observe, what your heirs can observe if you bring them to new places. If you know that they've never been to another country, bring them out of the country. If not outside of the country, at least somewhere within the country that's outside of the normal area that they live in. Bring them somewhere else. Show them where different opportunities are. Introduce them to different types of people. And then they're gonna become open-minded. They're gonna learn different skill sets, how to relate with different types of people, how to communicate with different types of people. It's gonna start expanding their mind forward. Now, the final one is exposure to work or environments where the skill is used. So let's say if you have a particular skill. How many people do you know have learnt a particular skill just because that their family member knows a skill, and that when they were a kid or something, they used to hang around the dad's garage or something, and they learned how to change a tire because that the dad was they were there, he just taught them. People learn from what you do, right? People don't do as you say, people do as you do. So if you really want to get a hands-on approach as well, if maybe you're not the best teacher, maybe you're not the best mentor, you can at least bring them into the environment where you do what you do, and you can show them as you do it. And they will naturally learn. They will be used to certain different types of environments, fast-paced environments, slow-paced environments. It's going to be very effective. Now, here's a few high-value skill ideas that I have for you, okay? Because at the end of the day, I can't just mention a buzzword, high-value skills, and not tell you any sort of high-value skills that you can have. So these are some that I've done myself. These are some that I've observed from other people. For example, I've been investing. I've got my own online businesses, and I've got my own brick and mortar business. I've got my own, I've developed my communication skills to a certain degree. I've learned the skill sets of accounting and taxation, derivatives trading, marketing, branding, and sales. These are all things I've had. The only thing I haven't really done here, I guess, the typical trades, right? I've learned by myself, but not at a professional level. Okay, so I know how to do DIY, I know how to do handyman stuff, I know how to do painting and stuff like that. But I couldn't tell you the ins and outs of it. So I'm gonna save that for somebody else who does know that. But what I can say is that with investing, for example, we've all seen the cash flow quadrant. If you haven't, it's a concept by Robert Kiyosaki. He basically proposes the idea that majority of the economy or people in the economy are either employed people or self-employed people. And with these self-employed people and employed people, they're basically exchanging their time for income. And when they're exchanging their time for income, you're pretty much limited to how much time you have pretty much, and also the value of the skills that you have. So a lot of the time, people like that, they will be on the lower ends of cash flow. Whereas people who are investors and business owners, they account for 4% and 1% of the entire population, right? So investors apparently is 1%, business owners 4%. Now, most people try to own businesses, and with businesses, you're now putting systems in place that's allowing other people to work under your brand, under your product, under your or under your niche, right? So whether it's a product-based business or a service-based business, doesn't really matter. You can do it either way, right? So for example, investing is a pretty great way, but investing can only be really and truly be done once you have capital. If you don't have capital, you can't really invest. Or you can invest, but it'll just be at lower levels and the returns will be quite low, realistically. So I recommend investing only once you've not only built your emergency fund, but you've also put yourself in a position where you've got a decent cash flow going for yourself. Okay? We're going to get into that a little bit later though. Launching and scaling brick and mortar businesses. Now this might look like let's say for example a restaurant, right? You can open up a restaurant, whether it's a franchise restaurant or one that you've got your own recipes that you've created and your own branding, etc. Whichever method you do is up to you. Now this can obviously be quite lucrative. It is risky, of course, but if you don't risk, you don't create, right? You don't reward. You can't get reward without risk. There's a relationship between the two. Now, launching and scaling online businesses, this is something that's a bit more recent of nowadays. Traditionally businesses, you can only really and truly have a brick and mortar business, right? Putting a business somewhere under a rooftop, and that's where your business operates. Nowadays, times are different. We have been blessed with the blessing of technology, right? Technology has exponentially grown in the past century. And we're now at a point in history where you can start an online business, you can create a store online, and you can sell products and services from that store online as if it has the same foot traffic, if not more foot traffic, than that brick and mortar business. Because brick and mortar businesses, you can only really have foot traffic, as in people walking past your business and seeing your business by your business being put somewhere that's obviously where there's high levels of foot traffic. That's going to cost a lot of money now. Whereas with online businesses, you can have that same effect, but multiply that by 10, or multiply it by 100, or multiply that by unbelievable numbers, because the amount of people that's on the internet every single day, we're talking billions now. Billions of people on the internet every single day. There's billions of searches every single day, if not trillions, right? I don't know. I genuinely don't know how many, but it's an incredible number. So you need to think about that. You can actually launch a business nowadays and launch it online. And you can launch that online business to then, put your product or put your service out there in front of other people's eyes. Like, for example, I have a friend who used to sell products on Amazon. And I will admit, I also tried selling products on Amazon as well. I stopped doing it because Jeff Bezos, he was just taking too many fees and it was too time intensive. So, especially for how much return you get after putting in investments. But with with this being said, there's actually marketplaces out there that you can put products and services in front of, which makes it a lot more easier for you to find customers, because there's already foot traffic going through these websites. These are essentially middlemen. You can actually create middlemen as well. You can create apps, you can create websites, etc. As long as it has some sort of value and provides value to a certain niche, you can actually sell that business as well later on, bear in mind. Or you can just create a monthly cash flow from it. Now, I have an online business myself. I've had several in the past. My main one is my education company. So I actually help people to learn a particular skill set, and that business in itself is based upon me having a skill set, me having systems within that skill set, me then creating a product about helping people to create that same effect that I've got plus more, and getting people that result. So nowadays, we're actually in a very interesting time where you can start a business without ever actually having a place of business, if that makes sense. Your place of business could literally be your house and nobody would step foot inside of your house other than yourself and your family. Like, it's a very interesting time that we live in. So trades, right? Trades is another one, right? So trades, this is a great way of getting actual cash flow. So if you think about nowadays especially, I'll be real, there's information out there. You can go on Google and find out how to, paint a house, or you can go on Google and find out how to fix a certain element of your car. But most people just can't be bothered to do it. So naturally, you can get paid to bricklay. You can get paid to do some DIY. You can get paid to paint. You can get paid to do some car work. Whether it's people who know how to do it or people just don't have time to do it, or they want somebody who's better at doing it than them. For example, the other day, I had to put up my TV onto my wall, and I wanted to make sure that I don't put up in a way where it ends up falling off the wall and flat on the floor, and that's my TV broken and the wall broken. So I just paid somebody, £150, I think it's like £175 total, or £125, something along those lines. And he came and did it within a couple of hours, right? And also mounted my soundbar as well. So it's a thing where I pay somebody for their skill sets, and they did it for me at a high quality and fast speeds. It would have taken me a very long time to do it, and I might have made some mistakes. So I'd rather not do that and just pay somebody else and make sure that everything's done smoothly, right? And that's where trades come into play, right? Whether you're an electrician or a bricklayer, it doesn't matter where it is, these people get paid a lot, right? You could also get into truck driving, right? Logistics, etc. That pays a lot, right? Shipping, that pays a lot. Communication skills, right? This is something that everybody should have. Everybody should have communication skills. And the reason why you want communication skills is because this is what allows you to influence people, and it's what allows you to effectively get your ideas out there. Because at the end of the day, if you want to pitch an idea to an investor, you need to communicate that. If you want to convince somebody to not jump off of a building, you need to communicate. If you want to convince somebody to buy into you, to buy into what it is that you're selling, to buy into the product that you have, you need to be able to communicate. And that also links in with the next one: marketing, branding, and sales. Okay? So for anyone out there who is starting a business, you need to have marketing. You need to learn to market. Because at the end of the day, if you have a product, doesn't matter how good your product is, doesn't matter how good your service is. If the marketing is not there, people will not find your product, quite simply put. So it doesn't matter how good it is, people not only won't know how good it is, but they also won't know that it even exists. So marketing is going to do that. Branding will help people to know how good it is. And then the sales is what actually gets people to take that next step forward, right? So you need to understand these three different things. If you know marketing, branding, and sales, you will elevate. I don't care where it is, you will elevate, right? And obviously, wherever it is, whether it's a trade, or if it's an online business, or a brick and mortar business, or it's even investing. At the end of the day, you might want to catapult your success by pitching to other investors to invest into something that you're investing into. Maybe, let's take, for example, you might try to get a bridge loan from somewhere, right? And you want to invest that into properties. It's going to be difficult to get that bridging loan if you're trying to get directly from somebody or a finance company. You don't have a branding for yourself. You have a rubbish credit score. These things are all gonna, you know what I mean? If you can't even tell that person, communicate to that person the value of what it is that you're going to be investing into. So that means they know that they're not just giving you money for you to waste it and end up blowing it on nothing, right? They want to have security that you're going to take their money and make a return and give it back to them within a timely manner. So you need to be able to communicate that by pitching something to them. So that's going to really help you to do so. Accounting and taxation, this is a very high value skill set. This is what my dad had. And this is why I've also developed for myself after going studying at university for 4 years and getting an degree in accounting and finance. And this is an incredible skill set because at the end of the day, every single person and every single company needs taxes. They say that there's two things that's guaranteed in life: death and taxes. Let's be real now. If you ain't paying taxes, that's just simply tax evasion. You're going to get thrown into prison for that. So at the end of the day, everybody wants it to be done for them. Like, I have a friend of mine who is inside of a mastermind. I'm not going to mention any names, but he mentioned to me that he's in contact with one of the CEOs of an accounting company who has one client, and that one client is paying them millions every single year to do their accounts. That's an incredible amount of money just for one client. So having that skill set of accounting and taxation is incredibly valuable, not only to deliver as a service, but for yourself, because you understanding accounting and taxation will help you to be able to do things yourself, because accountants can be expensive, especially in the long run. Now, if you're, and on top of that, you want to be able to make sure that if you do hire an accountant, they're doing it at a high quality. They might not understand certain ways of how you can maybe, some tax loopholes, etc. They won't know, but they might not know that. Or maybe they might be too scared to do it because maybe they're accredited by certain bodies, etc. You need to understand these things for yourself so you can take advantage of these different things. Because there's always different little loopholes in these systems. And you can take advantage of that, but the problem is that you don't know how to because you don't know anything about it. You don't even know how the tax band system works. That's not making sense now. That's just not making sense, right? So you just understand the taxation and accounting can help you save money in the long run. Now, derivatives trading, this is what I've mainly done over the past 6 years. Now, there's different types. There's options, there's futures. Now, the one that I went with is contracts with differences, right? CFDs. And this is the type of trading that I engage with. And this skill, I feel like derivatives trading, it's not really the best for cash flow typically. Derivatives trading is more for wealth creation. And the reason why I say this is because that you might have a losing month. If you're solely reliant on trading for your income, it probably won't be the best thing for you. And the reason why is because you don't want your psychology to be affected when making certain decisions inside of the markets because that you're reliant on the income. The income should be supplementary to you. So if you want that to be supplementary to you, it's better to have that as a secondary source of income than you have something that allows you to gain a cash flow on a monthly basis. However, some people do take the skill set full time and they do use it as a cash flow vehicle, and it works very well if you're able to do it right? So for example, making use of funded accounts, etc. This can allow you to accelerate yourself into the markets a lot more faster than other people would, because you are now leveraging other people's money to allow yourself to make more money than you typically would be able to, since you might have a lower level of access to capital, right? You might have less than £1,000, whereas you can get yourself funded like some of my students are and get yourself funded over $500,000, for example, right? These are all things that you can do with this skill set. So one thing I want you to think about though is these type of skills, right? So it's more than ideal for you to have the following 4 skills. And you want to have a skill that, one, allows you to build and grow relationships. Everything is about relationships. You can try to be antisocial all you want. You can try to hate people all you want. You can try to avoid people all you want. But it doesn't make this less true. Everything is about relationships. The biggest opportunities of your life will come from developing a relationship with somebody. There's people who can help you to a certain degree of, wow, this would change my life if I just know this person. And once you know this person, actually having a good relationship with that person, right? So this is things like, for example, how can you actually build and grow relationships? This is developing skills such as empathy, the ability to just listen and relate with people, the ability to be funny and bring joy into people's lives and be humorous, complimenting people, giving people stuff, rather than just receiving constantly, actually giving to them. These are stuff that will build and grow relationships. You want to start thinking about that. The next thing, you need a skill that will allow you to effectively and concisely express ideas and influence others, right? I briefly alluded to this earlier. Communication. Communication is key in all senses of the word, right? You need communication. You need high levels of communication. If you really want to be somebody who's wealthy, you need to have good levels of communication. For example, if you're going to go ahead and build a business, you're going to have employees working for you at some point. You need to be able to effectively communicate to these employees what you expect them to do. To be able to assert your boundaries correctly, to be able to, set a level of expectations correctly, to be able to lead them correctly, to inspire them correctly. You need communication, not only just with, business, but just life in general. It's going to help you to build and grow those relationships. It's going to help to open up more opportunities for you. It's also going to help to close off previous opportunities for you that you didn't want anymore, that no longer serve you. Right? Communication is key, right? There's a clear correlation between people who are able to communicate effectively and wealth. The better you are at communication, the better off you are. So communication, you need to understand though, communication isn't only the words that you're saying. A lot of people just assume that it is, but in fact, I believe only about 7% of communication are the words you're actually saying. Now, 38% of communication is the tone of your voice. So you being able to change the tone of your voice will affect how you're communicating ideas. So if you're able to communicate ideas effectively with the tone of your voice, to be able to change how people perceive the information you're giving to them, it would change how they perceive the information. It would change how they receive the information. And it would then change how they act and respond and react to the information you're giving to them. So if you're able to change your tonality, or even if you're able to understand people's tonality, if you can understand people's tonality, you can really hear what the person's actually saying. If you can also see the body language, right? Body language is 55% of communication. So if you're able to read body language, you can actually find out what somebody's saying without them actually saying it. Because they could say something, but the tonality in the body language is conflicting the words that they're saying. This is how you know that somebody is telling a certain lie, or this is how you know that somebody isn't really receiving what you're telling them correctly. Or this is how you know somebody actually doesn't even understand what you're saying to them. For example, I'm sure there's probably been times where you're trying to speak to somebody inside of a loud environment, and you look at them and their body language is a little bit like closed off, and it's a little bit, it's just showing signs that it's confused. It's clear that person didn't hear you. You can clearly say, oh, that you didn't hear me, did you? And they're like, yeah, I didn't hear you. Do you know what I mean? It's what happens, right? So you have a understanding of tonality. You have an understanding of body language. You understanding the communication with the words. You can actually improve not only your own levels of communication, but how you're receiving the communication from other people. Now, the third one is generating cash flow, right? So you want to be able to generate cash flow. Now, this is a major one. I can't lie to you. And it's interesting how many people sleep in this. I actually slept in this for a very long time, because at first when I started to embark on my journey of trying to build up the generational wealth for myself and for my heirs, I kind of skipped this step, right? I went straight to number 4, which is maintaining and growing cash reserves. I didn't have much cash in my reserves because I lost it all already. So I didn't have any cash. So I spent a long time trying to, invest and stuff like that. And that then, it brought some return in. But you have to understand that when it comes to return of investment, you can't expect crypto level of returns all of the time. That's just ridiculous, right? It's quite unrealistic, in fact. So when it comes to this, you need to think about cash flow. Like, there was a point of time where I had amazing amount of amount of capital in my portfolio. Let's take, for example, at some point I had over £80,000 in my crypto portfolio, but my cash flow was quite low. It's not making sense. So I'm making investments and stuff like that, and I'm building up my cash. I'm feeling rich as hell. I'm feeling rich. But when it came to that monthly cash flow, that now damaged things a little bit, because now, let's say, the cash flow isn't really consistent. Maybe you might have one month you're making 2K or 3K, but then the next month maybe you're making 1K. Maybe the next month it's 500. That became a problem for me. So I had to think about different ways how I can, overcome that. So I started to think about how can I actually create better cash flow, right? And cash flow is where the cash is king, right? That's what people say. So you need cash flow, right? It's not just having cash in your reserves. Yes, that's great, but you need the cash flow. The cash flow is what is going to give you constant fuel for your engine, for your system, okay? So cash flow is absolutely required, right? So, you want to reach to a point where you're now making an amount of cash flow where you're actually able to pay for your liabilities, right? In terms of living costs like rent, bills and groceries, etc. And you're also able to reinvest the difference, right? Still enjoying some as well. You want to get to a point where you're still able to enjoy some cash, right? Still able to book a holiday if you want to, or to be able to go out and have a nice meal with a family or loved ones, right? You should be able to still do that. But you should also be in a position where you're able to take some sort of portion of what is left over, reinvest that somewhere, right? Whether you are saving it to reinvest or you're straight up just reinvesting it. Whatever you do, you need to have cash flow to do that. So otherwise, then what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself, if you skip to number 4, you're going to have cash reserves, you're going to have investments, etc. But every single time the cash flow is not hitting, right, you're going to have to withdraw from these cash reserves just to survive. That is not how you want to live, because what's going to happen is over time you're slowly going to diminish how much you have inside of those reserves without actually putting back enough inside of those reserves to make up for the fact that you took out of it. So, and that's going to really stunt your growth and delay your growth a lot, right? So don't be the person who skips straight to number 4. First, generate cash flow. Whether that is with one of these high-value skill sets that I mentioned before, whether you're launching businesses, whether you're launching online businesses and services. Now, obviously, the easiest one you can do, trades. If you have a trade of some sort, this is hands down the easiest way how you can start to develop income. Because at the end of the day, people always need painters. People always need their cars to be fixed. People always need bricks laid. And on top of that, you can cater towards a higher value customer who's willing to pay you more. For example, with one of my investment properties, we do it as a service accommodation. So we're constantly paying this cleaning team. Every single time they come to our investment property, we're paying them £60 each time the team comes through. We might do about 2 cleans a week. That adds up quite a lot. So that's a way, and that's just from one client that they have. They might have 10 other clients. That's now adding up quite a lot now. So you need to think about what you can do, right? For example, being a handyman, that's obviously hands down one that's pretty great, because there's a lot that can be done, right? For some people, it might be a window specialist. For some people, it might be being an electrician, or just doing simple DIY jobs for people, building IKEA furniture, for example. That's a big one. There's people out there who can't build furniture when they receive it. Cater towards them, right? Maybe they have a disability. Maybe they have mobility issues. Maybe they simply just don't know how to do it. They just lack the tools. They're going to invest into somebody to do it for them, or they don't have time. Simple as, right? So these are all things that you can do, okay? Once you have a cash flow, you can then have the capital to then reinvest the difference of what is available left after your expenses are paid, after taxes are paid, after all these things are paid. You can now use that to maintain and grow your cash reserves, okay? And the way how you do that is by investing your capital, okay? It's by storing your capital as well into places where you can actually save money. For example, a lot of people invest into gold, right? You might invest into gold to make sure that you're able to sustain your levels of wealth and also basically fight against inflation, right? You maybe want to hedge against inflation. You might invest into gold or silver as well. Now, I'm personally investing into silver. The reason why, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I literally just went into it with one of my mentorship calls with my students. But there's something called the gold to silver ratio. And right now it's at a high value of 80, which is quite high, meaning that the value of gold is a little bit further away from the value of silver. Okay? And typically speaking, the number rests between 40 to 70 being on the higher end. Right, and historically speaking, after certain situations, it's dropped down to as low as like 17, for example. Right, the value of at this point of time of 23rd of October 2024, the value of silver for 1 ounce of silver is $33 US. The value of gold is $2,716. That's a big difference, right? If you divide the gold against the silver, that's what gives you the number of 80.78. And that is how you get that gold to silver ratio. So if I'm expecting for silver to potentially catch up to the value of gold to a degree, and in proportion to the ratio, then, and also silver has a previous high in 2011 of $50 US. Right now it's at 33. That's about a 50% increase. You may as well. I believe it's actually a 49% increase. Whatever it is, there is literally opportunity right there for you, right? That's somewhere where you can store your money, and not only will it maintain, but potentially grow as well. Now, cash reserves. You want to grow those cash reserves, right? So first and foremost, you want to actually put money away. So as you're generating this cash flow, you want to be able to learn how you can budget in a way that allows you to financially make sure that you have cash that's set aside. And then once you have that cash that's set aside, you can then put that into investments. And based upon the amount that you have set aside, it allows you to make bigger plays with your investments. For example, if you invest, let's say £1,000, and you're expecting a 10% return off of that £1,000, so if you have £1,000, 10% of that is literally going to give you £100. Now, don't get me wrong, £100 is better than no pounds. However, if you've managed to save up 10K, 10% of that is now going to equate to 1,000. So you see how the more capital you have, the better you are. But what you can do as well is you can start off with 1,000. Once you make that 1,100, that's now 1,100. 10% of that 1,100 is now going to be 1,110. And then so forth. You can see how it will gradually grow on from there. 1,210. That you now have. Oops, let's not spoil things now. That's now going to give you, at 10%, that's now gonna give you 121. And you can see how it's just gonna gradually increase each time you do this, right? So that's how you can incrementally grow capital over time, right? But you need to know what to invest into to actually make that happen. You can't just do that and gamble your money away, right? You've worked hard for this money. You need to actually have a set plan of action to grow and maintain this cash, okay? How much are you, and that's not only just knowing what to put your money into, it's also knowing what portion of your portfolio do you put your money into that. For example, you're not gonna put all of your money into risky assets. You could, but it's very risky. You might diversify that risk and have a portion of your portfolio invested into a bit more safe havens, right? Maybe you might put a portion of that into gold and silver. Maybe you might put a portion into that into stuff like maybe some types of stocks that are a bit more safer than riskier ones, right? Rather than investing into startups, you might put your money into companies that are dealing with governmental contracts, like military companies, right? Companies that are developing weaponry for the government. And that, do you know what I mean? So you can understand how that is going to help you to develop and grow and really build that wealth. Now, on the flip side, you may have, for example, riskier investments, right? Invest into stocks of smaller companies that haven't really grown yet, right? Rather than buying Apple and Microsoft, those are well-established companies with huge cash reserves. They're unlikely to fall tomorrow. But a small startup company is likely to fall within the next 2 years. So that's obviously a risky investment. Now, obviously, it's going to be cheaper to purchase that stock, but it's going to give you a potential higher reward. Bear that in mind. That's why the employees of NVIDIA are millionaires now, because they were able to get the stocks whilst the price and the value of that stock was low, and they were able to grow that company together, and they were then able to then, quite frankly, they were able to make millions off of just working for that company and having the stocks purchased for that company through their compensation plan inside of their company. So personally, I did number 4, right? I went straight to number 4, and it humbled me, delayed my growth. What I tried to do is I tried to dive into building a skill set with the intended use of growing capital, but I didn't actually have the capital to begin with, right? So it was when I actually developed the first 3, that's when I started to grow exponentially, right? So what I did was I started to grow my monthly income to a point where I'm making over between 15 to 30K on a monthly basis. And then what I did from there is then reinvest that, okay? That's what you want to do. You want to first grow your capital, then reinvest, okay? And it doesn't have to be at quite a high amount like how I started off with. It could be something much less. You could start off with something as simple as 5K per month, right? It could even be 3K per month post-taxes. That's still enough capital, right? Especially if you're living outside of London and you're not living alone, right? If you're living with friends, right? You can split on the rent and you can actually save money by doing that, right? You could also open up a business with that extra £1,000 you have a month that isn't being spent on living costs, etc. You now have £1,000 a month worth of play money. That's over time, over the course of the year. That's £12,000 saved up at the end of the year. If you wait another 8 months, that's now 20K. That could actually afford you a mortgage in some places. So it's about thinking about what you're going to do with this capital and having a kind of benchmark for what you're aiming for and then reinvesting that amount. So one thing though is that once I grew, I didn't just harbor that skill set for myself, right? I actually pushed the ladder down and I wanted to help others too through my mentorship program, which went on to win me a prestigious award. Thankfully, I've actually got an award here. So I've got an award for it. And this resulted in an impact like no other, genuinely. And through me developing this skill set and for me going on this journey myself, I was able to then, actually help people to develop the same skill set myself because, once I finally was able to start seeing profitability through trading, it took me 2 years to do so, right? So bear in mind, I tried to develop that skill set. I thought in that first year I was going to see my first million. I was far from wrong, right? So you want to understand that it takes a while to learn certain skill sets, but once you learn it, then you will be able to see results from it, right? The next 2 years, right, I was sending signals as well. In 8 months, through my signals alone, made 176% profits in 8 months. Then also, again, invested into crypto and was using a similar strategy to invest into that as well. Turned 4,000 into 80,000 in that year, right? Had some friends of mine who were also following what we were doing. I have a screenshot. He made 1,800% returns in that year. And that's like my best friend, literally. So it's about impacting other people, bringing people up with you, right? As you go along, like you can teach people. And this is the thing as well, right? Once you have that high value skill set, you can actually create another business based upon that. And that's one of my businesses that I did, right? I created a mentorship company that teaches people a high value skill set. Based upon me having this high value skill set, you can actually charge a high value price, because a price that reflects the fact that it's high value. If I can teach people how they can make 176% in 8 months, the sky's the limit of how much you can be paid for that, genuinely, right? Especially a skill set like that, and especially at the quality that we teach people, right? So for example, we've got Aman, for example, he went on to go through my mentorship. He's been trading on a live account. This is back in April. He made 6.8K in profits, and now he's actually funded over £500,000 in capital. He recently built an education center back at home in Pakistan with the capital that he's making. Ahmad, for example, he went through the mentorship. You can see here, this is a funded account. He was making 1.7K profits. This is literally from last week. We've got Rowan, for example. He went through the mentorship quite a while ago, actually, just a little over a year ago. He's got a funded account. He made $2,000 profit on inside of his funded account with one trade that he held for 2 hours. You've got Yasin, for example, 5.8K profits made, right? I think that was on his demo account, and then eventually he got himself funded over 100K, and now he's got a profit split, his first profit split of 8.8K, and that was at the beginning of September, which is last month. It's incredible what you can do with a high value skill set. Now these people, they chose to use the same high value skill set that I chose. Now the reason why is because they had capital ready. They understood, they've obviously seen me on social media, they've seen my progression over the years. Some of them actually were clients when I was sending signals as well. And they saw the development, they said, yep, I want to do this. In fact, some of them were already doing it, but they were struggling to see results. They said, you know what, bro, I really need some help with this. Can you help me and teach me? Yep, sure, no problem. Give them my strategy, give them the resources, give them the tasks that I provide to them. And now they're inside of a position where I have some students making 5 figures in a month at the age of 21. Now, there's different angles that you can take with this, but it doesn't matter what your skill set is. It doesn't have to be trading. I understand that this skill set is not for everybody. I'll be real with you. It's not for everybody. Not everybody will be good at this. Not everybody can get results from this. Not everybody is willing to adapt and to learn and to get good at this. Some people might be different. Some people you might want to just go and build up an audience online through content creation and sell the audience to other companies and get sponsorship fees or advertisement fees and so forth, or affiliate marketing, right? On my journey, I got humbled and I tried to go jump into trading with small amounts of capital and tried to quit my job at the same time. I had to end up going back into work at the beginning. And the reason why is because I was jumping the gun, right? I was jumping the gun. I tried to skip to number 4 before I had number 3, okay? I barely even had the skill set at that point in time. I wasn't consistently profitable yet. I didn't have systems in place. I didn't have a mentor like how I mentor my students. So because of that, I wasn't able to get the results for myself. Now, when it comes to that process, I then had to backtrack, get a job again, build up my cash flow. Through building up my cash flow, I was then able to reinvest into myself. I was able to then learn more. I was able to then go ahead and do more, right? Invest more, build up my capital, build up my cash reserves, then invest that later on. But before then, you need to consider how you can do that, right? And one of the ways how I did that was whilst I was also working a job, I would also build an audience on social media and I would do affiliate marketing, whilst also developing the skill set at the same time. In that same year, additional to the money I was already making from employment, I made over 30K extra in my pocket. That's just making sense. Why? Because I had the skill set of communication. I had the skill set of building and growing relationships. And that allowed me to generate a cash flow, which then allowed me to maintain and grow my cash reserves a lot more faster. Because if I was only relying on my job income, post-tax, it wasn't really that much. Not only post-tax, but post-liabilities, paying for cost of things. It wasn't that much. Not much is left over. But if I have 30K extra in my salary, I'm breezing now. I got cash to invest. And that's what you want to do. You want to start building up those cash avenues for you. And as you do so, you can do that. And as you make capital through, for example, let's say if you were to go through the avenue of getting, let's say you have a job already and you're making 2K a month post-taxes. Let's say Yasin, he got himself a 100K funded account. It costs about £250 to get yourself funded. Or let's say on a higher end, let's say a bit more like £350 you have to pay for a 100K funded account. All you have to do is prove to that prop firm that you're profitable by hitting certain profit targets. And if you do that twice without hitting the loss threshold, you then get pretty much funded that account. You can trade that capital and they give you a profit split, which is an average industry average of about 80-20. You would keep 80% of the profits, the prop firm would then take 20%. So if you had that extra £350 spare on a monthly basis, you just put that one time into a funded account, you get yourself funded, and then let's say, for example, that next, within the 2 months, you get your first payout, and let's say it's £6,500. Obviously, I'm converting the 8K to pounds. So that's about £6,500. That's £6,500 extra that you have. You can then take, assuming that you get, if you're able to do that once, you can probably do it twice, right? So let's say you now leave off with 13K across 2 months later on. Now, obviously, you're gonna have to set aside some of that for taxes, right? So after you set aside some of that for taxes, let's say, give or take, you have about 8K left to spend. To get my first investment property, I did rent to service accommodation. I did that strategy. We spent about £10,000 upfront, and we went for a deal sourcer. So of course, we paid a little bit extra. We paid them 3K. So realistically, it could have been about 6K to 7K. Now, if we didn't go for the deal sourcer route, that's how much we would have spent. That remaining 8K that you have available, that could land you that first property. And this same property I'm talking about, in the past, I think 2 weeks, it's made us 1.8K. That's after bills are already paid. That's a really great profit. And now that's another avenue. And now we're looking to get our next one, and that's gonna then increase that monthly cash flow, the weekly cash flow, the daily cash flow. So that's what we wanna think about. You wanna think about how can you get this money to then reinvest that money to make more money. And once you get that money back, how can you then reinvest that money once more? Once you get that back, maybe one more time. Let's just reinvest it one more time. Let's see how much more we can make from it. And if you do that over time repeatedly, that is how you start to build up your level, not only your level of cash flow, but the level of net assets that you have in your pocket. And that is how you then create that generational wealth. And then over time, as you transition from where you are to the next stage of your heirs, they will then receive that wealth. And if you've taught them the skill set, they now have something that they can put their money into that would allow them to rinse and repeat and do even more with what you've given to them. They can now continue, because the reason why a lot of people spend money, in fact, one major reason why I spend all of my money is simply because that I didn't have a system that I was using. I didn't know how to invest. I didn't know what to do with money. I just saw money. The only thing I needed to do with it was spend it. I didn't even know what to spend it on, right? So they say poverty and riches are both the offspring of thought, right? So very rarely are the reasons behind consistent wealth succession to do with the actual money. It's more to do with the minds that possess it. So you want to think about how you can start building up skill sets from now to pass on to your heirs. So your heirs will then have something that they can use to actually maintain the wealth and grow the wealth. If you don't do that for yourself, you can't pass it on. If you can't pass it on, then everything that you're working for right now will go to waste. And it's very important that we stop with that. We start learning how to be more financially literate. We start learning how to develop better relationships. We start learning how to communicate more effectively, because these different skill sets are going to help create the building blocks which will result into you being the highest version of yourself. Because not only can you create wealth, you can deliver so much value just by being able to communicate. Think about this whole past hour that I spent speaking to you. This is purely based upon me actually communicating to you. If I lacked the skill set of communication, I wouldn't be able to communicate these ideas to you. I wouldn't be able to educate you. And because I wouldn't be able to educate you, you will live your whole life not knowing this thing. So it was important for me to develop that ability to communicate effectively so you could learn this. So you can then effectively communicate this to the next generation. And they can then communicate that to the next generation. The reason why I'm doing this partially is so this video is going to be online. So when I die, I don't have kids yet, but I have a little sister, I have an older sister, I have a mother, I have family, and I eventually will have kids. They will see this video too. They will learn from this video, and they will see what they can do to actually build that wealth, build the succession of the wealth as well, and solidify that, because that's what's important at the end of the day, is actually being able to successfully pass that wealth on to the next heir, or create the wealth in general, okay? Most people aren't creating wealth to begin with, so it's very important that we take these steps forward. So I'm going to leave off with this question. What will you do today to ensure that you are the start of financial prosperity for your family? And what will you do tomorrow to ensure that your heirs will carry this forward further than 3 generations? because we need to think about it. How can we make sure that our family isn't the family that loses it within the next generation? I already did that, so you don't need to repeat that. Learn from my mistakes, be wise and learn from my mishandling, and use this reflection that I'm giving to you to be able to transcend beyond the results that I got, because I want you to, and you want you to, and your family, or they're waiting for you to do so, right? So if you're actually listening to this video, if you've made it to this end so far, make sure you drop a like first and foremost. If you've gained some value from this, drop a like. And I also want you to actually think about these questions, because like, don't just sit on it and, oh, these are interesting questions. Like, no, really write down a plan behind this. Sit down and think about what you can do today to ensure the start of your financial prosperity, whether that's you starting that higher value skill set, whether it's you going out there and finally putting in your job application, getting some income for yourself, learning a particular trade, or learning another high value skill set, like for example trading. And bear in mind, if you do want to help with that, hit up wisewealthtrading.com and you can then apply to the mentorship. You only do this every 3 months. So if that's one of the skill sets that you want to embark on, go ahead and do it, you know, and make sure you're doing it at a high level. Okay, whatever you choose to do it at the highest level as you possibly can, and learn as many different soft skills alongside of it, so you can actually charge the best price for what you do, because you simply are the best at what you do. That means attention to details. Not only does that mean attention to details, that means actually being result driven. You want to get results more than anything. Don't just charge high prices and then not get results for people. You should be so flipping good at what you do that you can charge a high price, deliver the result, and by the end of it, like my students do, they can tell you, bro, if you was charging more for this, I would have paid you. Do you know what I mean? That's how you want to be, right? If you look at the trust pilot for Wise Wealth Trading, in fact, let's look at that right now. The reason why people go for this mentorship and they give us such great reviews, look, every single review is 5-star, and these are all genuine reviews. So if you want to go ahead and look at this, go ahead and look at it. Go ahead and read. And this will give you insight into how and why people are able to get such great results from this. But you want to think about, for whatever business that you're creating, you want to replicate the idea that by the end of this experience, people need to be able to confidently say, you know what, that was the best investment I could have possibly made. Genuinely, this is, and funny enough, Joshua Tracy is one of my students. He's 21 years old. He's quit his full-time job and he's now living in Thailand, trading full-time. Last time I checked, he was able to make 20K in 2 months. All profits. You know, so that's the type of level of results you want to get for yourself in whatever it is that you choose to do. I don't care what it is that you choose to do, but you need to choose on something today, and you should start practicing. Even if you don't know what it is just yet, you need to just take action with something. And after you take action with that something, you will then know whether it's for you or not. And based upon if it's for you, great. Hammer down and do some more of it. Think about how you can improve and get to the next level. Go find somebody who's better than you and learn from them, right? Adapt from how they've done it, etc. If it's not something you don't want to do, great. That's now something that you know that you don't want to do. Now you can move on to that second thing that you also thought of. That's how it goes. Sometimes you have to go through a bad apple to find the good apple, okay? So make sure that you first take that step forward, then you can start getting to the rest of everything. So with that being said, guys, this is Wim Zach. I hope you guys got a lot of value from this conversation, and I look forward to seeing you at the next conversation, okay? So if you really saw value from this, on a final note, drop a quick comment of what you found most valuable from this recording. I really want to know, like, what is it that you find most valuable? What are your next steps moving forward? How are you looking to create that wealth for your family? These are all important discussions that we need to have. And without these type of discussions, we're not going to have it, because you're not going to be exposed to the information that you need to get to that next step, okay? So let's engage in that discussion from now. Now is the time. You know, if you have somebody that you love and care about, send this video to them. That's the way how you can start that conversation, because now they're going to have a different level of perspective to it, to the same degree as you. And now you both can come together and have a communication about, you know, oh, what is the plan of action? What can we do about this? Because this is a big problem that's happening inside of our community today. By the way, there are some fake accounts of me going around on TikTok. It was happening on Instagram for a while. My only TikTok account is Win with Zach, with a C, okay? WINWITHZAC. That's my only account on Instagram. That's my only account on Twitch. That's my only account on YouTube. And that is my only account on TikTok. Now, the only platforms that are spelt slightly differently, just Snapchat at this point of time, which is Win with Zach 1. That's the only difference. The only difference is that there's a 1 on the end of the Zach, okay? No spaces, no underscores, literally just win with Zach with a C, okay? So if you see any accounts over there, ignore them, report them, block them, don't pay them any sort of money because they are trying to scam people. Please bear in mind. So make sure that you hold tight into your pockets, do due diligence, drop a comment on one of my videos if need be, or contact me on one of the social medias that I've just mentioned above and ask me just to verify if that really is me or not, because there are some people trying to scam people and stuff like that. And if I say no, just drop them a block and report them, because it's wrong to be doing that. That's the wrong way of going about acquiring wealth for yourself, okay?